Welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and broadcast. I'm Jessie Lezak, fractional CMO at BeatX, along with BeatX's enterprise sales director, Adam Fitzgerald, who's in for David Finkelstein today. What's new, Adam? Long time no see.
I know it's been a while, and I'll try to do justice in David's absence. We have a barrage of storms heading to the southeast right now, Jesse. I don't know if you caught any of those over the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
So mainly trying to stay out of their way. Other than that, things are heating up on the BDX side, as you know, especially as we prepare to participate in the upcoming Programmatic I/O conference later this month in Vegas. So if anyone is planning to attend, we'd certainly love to meet up.
Ooh, that's a great reminder. Thanks for bringing that up, Adam. Yeah, if anyone's listening, you're going to be at Programmatic I/O, hit up Adam and maybe you can meet up while you're there. But today we are lucky because we have a really great guest that we're thrilled to introduce you to. And we are happy to welcome him on. His name is Jamie Thomas. He is the CEO and co-founder of Cognito Forms. I'm going to bring him here. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, Jamie, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Maybe you could start us off and kick us off by telling us a little bit about your story and your background and what led you to become the CEO and co-founder of Cognito Forms.
I'd be glad to. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting story for me, and it definitely was not my goal starting out in life, but I always knew as a kid I loved to build things. Lego was my favorite toy. Went to school at UVA in Virginia to get an aerospace degree to build rockets. But at the end of the day, I really loved writing software. Software was my passion. Was able to start at the early stages when the internet was really just starting to move to the web, and built my first web-based applications while I was still in college, and got an opportunity to start doing web consulting straight out of college. And I just loved it. It was so much fun. Everybody was so happy in the dot-com boom to just jump on the bandwagon and build software to reach people all over the world. So that was super exciting. I actually met my co-founder at my second job doing consulting, and she and I both, as we were working with various clients, kept seeing how there was so many people having very similar problems where they needed a custom solution that was a little bit different than the off-the-shelf software they had, or just wasn't anything relating to those. And they would hire us to build that software. And it was fun. It was great. But the reality was every customer wanted something a little bit different, but very similar in a lot of commonalities. But it was also very expensive. Writing software is time consuming. Writing good software is very time consuming. So we kept thinking, this is too expensive. And after they build it, then they're going to have to come back to us when they need to make changes. And then it's just like the off-the-shelf software. It's not very customizable. So we thought maybe we should find some software that would meet their needs, that we could customize more easily for them. Looked on the market, didn't find anything. And then we just asked the question, like, how do we empower our customers to build what they want and be able to manage and maintain that over time? And that's ultimately where we came up with the idea of building Cognito Forms. Our goal was to empower our customers to build that custom software themselves and to be able to maintain that cost effectively. So super excited to be here and to have that opportunity. We did that development in-house at our previous company. It was successful, allowed us to spin out. And that's when I became CEO. Definitely didn't ask for it, but I'm glad that I'm here. I'm very blessed to have that opportunity, and also very excited to have a very successful company and some amazing customers and coworkers to work with.
Well, that's really great. And I said this pre-show, but I'll say it again. But I'm really glad that you did that, because as a marketer, someone who's needed software in the past, I think it's a brilliant idea. And I can see how you're helping a lot of people with that. So this is going to be a great discussion. So let's just get right into it. Our first topic is AI boost. And we've been talking a lot about AI. So I'm curious to hear your take on this and how it streamlines marketers' workflows.
So I guess I'll start with this in general as it relates to AI. I would say AI is a tool. Start with that. It's a part of the solution, definitely not a substitute for people. And we need to make sure we're using it to make those people we have in our workforce more effective and happier in their jobs, without confusing its purpose, right? But the flip side of it is that a lot of the stuff we have to do involves sifting through lots and lots of data to make decisions. And there's things that AI just does a better job at it, right? So I think for marketers especially, they're overwhelmed with all of this information that's available to them about their target market and trying to reach their target market. And that's where you see a lot of really, really cool uses of AI in connecting and identifying the right people, figuring out when to reach them and how to reach them. The one thing I would say, though, is that's the point where you have to ask the question, okay, when do we pull human beings back into the process? So I say that AI helps you find them, but you still have to land them. You still have to contact them. When you reach out to them and say, hey, I see you're interested, ideally you want to have that be a human being doing that communication. When that person contacts you back and they provide you, maybe they fill out a survey with some information about what they're looking for, they're doing that with the expectation that the person responding back is a person, right? So the boost that I see a lot of it for right now with AI is in sifting through all of this copious amounts of data, streamlining that down to help you figure out what the people in your organization need to be doing, who they should be contacting, and maybe even assisting them on how to do that outreach back to the client. But it is a tool to boost their productivity and their happiness within your workforce.
To boost it, but not to boost it, but not to replace it.
Right, exactly. Everybody ends up happier because you're reaching people that need to be reached. You're not just marketing to anybody. You're marketing to people that actually maybe want your product. AI helped you do that. But then when those prospects are being contacted, they're not like, oh gosh, I got another email from an AI system, right? They know they're being approached by a real person who's investing their time back with them to make a real connection. And that's important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the things we were talking about pre-show, Jamie, was a little bit more about Cognito Forms, and you made a comment. I'm probably going to paraphrase this incorrectly, but kind of my recap is AI tends to help non-technical people accomplish some more technical tasks. So exactly what you said a minute ago. It's a tool, not a replacement of people. Can you talk a little bit maybe about some of the functional areas where you've seen AI really get leverage to increase efficiencies in the marketing workflow space?
Sure. So say, for example, you needed to, within our own product, you needed to survey people or create a form to collect information from your target market. We've actually made it to where you could ask in English and describe essentially a form to collect information for a specific topic. And the AI will actually kind of translate that request and actually build the form for you. And so if you were doing a campaign after campaign after campaign where you need to collect very specific information, and every time you do that, you're having to specifically describe that out in detail, that's a very time-consuming process. If you could just verbally, describe what you're wanting and have it sort of scour all of the knowledge of humanity to figure out what you really meant and provide that for you, that's great. So that's one of the things we've done within our own platform to automate that workflow, is by allowing you to just describe things. It's just like content creation, right? You think about, I want to try to write an article about something. It helps you get started with that process. It gives you a good framework for that. You still probably need a human being to review that article to make sure it's a good article. But it gets you a good starting point that's along the way. Another area I think, especially in terms of customer engagement, is in helping to answer questions. I know, we internally, even to some extent, are looking into ways where we can use AI to understand what the customers are asking for more effectively, and then also start formulating responses. Doesn't replace the need to be able to look at both what their questions were and their responses and make sure they're accurate. But it definitely streamlines that workflow.
It's a really great point. So I could see how that would be extremely helpful for marketers, especially and sales too, really, because there's so much data, right, Adam? Because you're the one that would have to sift through it all. Marketers, we're just bringing it in, right? And so, yeah, you still do need a human, but man, it is so much help. So it's a different world with AI, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And AI is only as good as the data. And so effective data management strategies are really important. So could you talk to us a little bit about effective data management strategies?
Absolutely. I think the first thing I'd like to focus on is like data itself. It has to be meaningful data. That's one of the things that you see, I guess, even with AI systems, they're still vulnerable to the same problem that we humans have, which is that the quality of the data that comes in affects the quality of what you can do with it, right? So the data needs to be accurate, it needs to be timely, it needs to be connected. And when I say that, it means it needs to be connected with other data you have in a meaningful way. And it needs to be connected with the people that need to interact with it so that you can know what to do with it.
Mm.
This is not necessarily specifically a marketing case. Well, actually, I'll do a marketing case. We talked about sales a little bit, right? So let's talk about a prospect scenario. Quality data for prospecting. You would want to know, how do we reach the prospect? What touch points have we had with them? What are their needs? We may need to ask them very detailed information about what those needs are, very specific, not just fill out a paragraph of text, but like ask them specific questions. And that's a lot of information. Some of those touch points and all that data is transactional over time. All of that leads to helping marketers make important decisions. But in addition to that, we need to know like who should be contacted for them. So let's say, for example, this prospect who's contacted us via marketing, we know they're interested in 3 products. We want to connect them to those 3 products so that we then know, oh, well, these are the salespeople that need to follow up with them. So connecting people to data is very important because it lets us then engage the right people on our end to do those reach outs.
That's a great response. So when you're saying you're connecting to the people to the data, how do you do that? How are you successful with that?
So within Cognito Forms, I can try to explain, the way we see that working, but I think this is true across the board for any system. So for example, when a prospect first contacts you and you're like, hey, let's start engaging with them and start sending out some follow-ups and stuff, you're going to store information about who they are. And then later on, when they start following up with inquiries, you're going to connect those inquiries back to that information you initially collected about who they are, right? And then as they start filling out those questions, like I said, like which products they're interested, you're connecting it to their products. They're selecting that relationship between this prospect and the products they're interested in is being established, right? And then that inquiry that's out there saying this prospect wants information about these products, you're going to want to know for those products who the salespeople are, connect those dots. And then when those salespeople are then using whatever software systems you have, like Cognito Forms, to see who they should reach out to, your goal is to make it so where they are like, okay, here are the top 10 prospects that I need to contact. I know they're interested in my products specifically. Here's the history of their interaction we've had with them to date. Here's the specific questions they're having, so that now you're making that salesperson very effective because they're logging in to the system, presumably that you've helped them with, to essentially say, here's what I need to do. Here's my top 10. Let me contact these top 10 today. And I see all this backstory and history about them. So that's kind of the connectivity that I was talking about. For us, we don't focus just on marketing. We're helping people solve problems in all industries. So it could be that initial request could have been like someone wanting to sell a house, and the actual company is the realtor. They're collecting information about the house from that prospect, being able to ask them a lot of questions and ultimately sell it to the person who's wanting to buy it. Being able to ask those questions one time and be able to distribute the workflow to the different people that need to be involved is really important, and that is part of that process. process.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that kind of sticks out to me, we talked a little bit about the marketing side and the sales side a little bit. One of the things that we found at BDEX, and I know a lot of other organizations have recognized this as well, it's the importance of collaboration and communication between different departments and different stakeholders within an organization, especially as it relates to the success of that data management strategy. So do you have any kind of tips or tricks that you've seen that could potentially help organizations, big and small, foster that culture and that collaboration a little bit more effectively?
Yeah, collaboration around data. I guess that's kind of what I was going at. It was hard for me to articulate it specifically just in the marketing world, but it's true across everything. So collaboration around data is, having information is great, but until you actually use it over time to accomplish something meaningful, it doesn't really add any value, right? Your goal is to accomplish something big. You're probably engaging multiple people. They may not even all be in the same walls, right? So you need to be able to essentially start with that. Say that's that lead you're talking about. Maybe it has to go off to a sales engineer for some sales engineering activities. It needs to, obviously the salesperson that's responsible for it has to be contacting the client. As that information is collected, you've got to figure out a way, whether it's with Cognito Forms or whatever systems you have, of sharing the right information to the right people at the right time. So there has to be a way for them to know, oh, I'm the sales engineer. Okay, I don't have to go talk to the sales rep down the street or in another building to figure out what I need to do. I've got the 5 engineering tasks. I have deadlines for them. I can go in there and see that as I do my work and provide the feedback for whatever the quote is. I know that system that I'm using is going to automatically inform maybe the sales rep, hey, the quote's ready, so that they can then immediately turn that around to the customer, whether that's a phone call or just sending them an update via email, letting them know that quote's ready. You need, especially in this day and age of a distributed workforce, you need a system to help with that communication over that data, and you need a system that doesn't require people to go check their inbox and go manage it via emails. That's just not going to work in this day and age. So ultimately, it's that multi-party collaboration over data via workflow that's really critical. And that's one of the things we've really focused on at Cognito Forms over the past 5 years, is building out that capability and making it easy for our customers to build those workflows to manage those engagements.
And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of AI and technology come into play today to take over some of those functional tasks of facilitating the handoff, or in some cases, the simultaneous activity between those different departments and stakeholders.
Right. I think and AI can help with some of that. Some of it, the organization has to sort of know what the process is, right? And maybe today that process, maybe they just know it, right? They hire somebody and they tell them, here's what you're supposed to do. I'll shoot you an email, when you need to do something, and you're going to put it on your calendar and you're going to kind of remember it, right? But it breaks down. Eventually, for it to be efficient, it has to be built in. It just has to work. That's one of our mantras. It just works. I think you want that. AI definitely can help, but it can't tell you how your processes are broken and fix them. It's not going to do that, right? So you do have to spend some time at some point figuring out what your processes are, and then finding the right tools to make it better.
And that really reinforces what we talked about earlier, where it's a tool and not a replacement for the people and the strategy that human interaction and involvement brings to the table.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I guess I would add that quality data can help you with all of that as well, reaching the right person at the right time on the right device. I mean, that line you said
Yes.
that, and I'm like, that used to be on the BDEX website.
Did it really? That's awesome. Well, it's so important. And that's one of the things, that we realized when we were building Cognito Forms was that so many times people are asked to provide information, but it's not guaranteed to be right. Like all the validation and logic and stuff you have to do to make sure it's the right data Oftentimes, how many times have you filled out a form and you're like, I just answered the same question on the previous page. Why am I doing this? Or I'm filling out this thing and it's like, this information is all for females. I'm clearly a male. Why am I being asked this question? That's a very obvious question right there. But you've all filled out forms where you're being asked for information, inundated with either things you've already answered or questions that are not relevant. And you need to collect quality data, but you also want to collect it efficiently, because especially when you're interacting with prospects and customers, they don't want to waste their time. So you need to make sure that you're doing it efficiently so that they feel respected and that they'll spend the time to provide the correct answers to help move the process forward.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great point. And I don't want to, move on to the next topic too soon, which is data collection tools. But, we're on the topic of effective data management strategies. So I can't help but wonder, with all of this, how are you helping to make sure? So there's the AI part of it, but is there
Right.
anything else software can do to help make sure that they are actually reaching the right people with quality data?
I mean, quality data comes from making sure the source is correct, right? You can't wait till later, right? You can always have people who are reviewing and scrubbing data and trying to make it correct. But if you get it at the source and you make sure it's accurate at the source, that's going to be the key. And so you ask the right questions, you make sure that the information provided is data, not just a narrative text, right? It has to be real data that's actionable. And data collection tools, as you said, they need to meet people where they are, minimize their effort to provide that meaningful information. And that part of that is, like I said, asking them only the questions you need to ask, asking it, making sure that when they enter it, it's valid. And then that'll make them feel empowered because they're being appreciated. The other thing I will add from a data collection perspective, though, is that if you have the ability to collect the data passively, do it. I'm not saying you should be like nefariously watching what people are doing and anything like that that's sometimes talked about in the marketing space. But, simply like, well, they were browsing our website and they seem to be interested in these products. Keep track of that information. You can use it. You don't have to necessarily ask prospects every question you possibly could ask. Sometimes you can figure it out passively based on what their interests are. But in terms of the quality, you asked, how do you make sure the right people have it when they need it? And, I think that just comes down to make sure it's right at the source, and then make sure that you're sharing that information with the right people at the right time, and making sure that as it's going from one person to the next, only the people that should be allowed to make changes to it are actually making those changes. You want to make sure that you have that sort of guarantee that the data is not shifting underneath you, right? You always worry about that. Like, well, was this what we said previously? I don't know. Maybe Nancy made that change. One of the things that we built into our product to try to address that was, very detailed auditing, so that you could answer that question of, was this right previously? Did somebody make a change? When did they make it? Why did they make it? But I think my best advice on that would be get it right up front, and then make sure that only the right people in the future have the opportunity to change it over time, so that you can be able to count on it and rely on it.
You said two things, Jamie, that stuck out to me, and it's what we preach all the time over here at BDEX. It's quality and is your data actionable, right? We run into folks all the time that are looking for more and more volume, but we mentioned it earlier. If you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out, and so if you're focused on quality and things that are actionable, I think that's really where you start to lean into data that really is going to make an impact on your business.
Right. And I think taking action on data is, I think, for me, a good segue too, because, people, if you're involving people as part of your marketing efforts or as part of your business, to do whatever their job is, you're asking them to take action on the data, right? And if you had them all walk into a room and say, there's mountains of paper on the table, go take action on it, right? they're going to run out. They're going to be like, I don't want this job, right? Your goal is to say, here's the data that you need to work on today. Here's your stack. But I've actually prioritized the stack. It's now in order. And like now now it's not just a stack of paper. Now it's electronic. So you can do it wherever you are. So one of the things that we strive to do is making sure that in this world where we're inundated with data, that each particular person in an organization can walk this case, walk into our product, and they can see what they need to do. They can see, okay, I have access to everything, but these are the 10 things I need to do today. And then while I'm looking at those 10 things, I actually know which of them, I know how to take action. This is the information I need to provide. These are the steps I need to take. And once I take that action, it's going to get off my to-do list. You need that too. And that's how you make people effective and you make them happy by empowering them to do their job and to give them the success of knowing they've completed it. Knowing what you need to do when you come to work is very important. Knowing that you've been successful doing it is even better.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you said something too earlier that stood out to me is, software can only do so much. You have to have a good source for the data. So, that's what we do. And so that's why that stuck out to me is yes, you absolutely do need a good source. And BDEX is glad to help anyone in the consumer space on that. But in terms of data collection, though, data collection tools, like what do you have some favorites of data collection tools or talk to us about data collection?
Right. So data collection, obviously that could be a lot of things, right? I mentioned passive. So obviously, I'm sure people are having fun with Google Analytics and BigQuery and other tools to collect sort of passive information. We actually, you're talking about tech stack. We actually use Pendo to capture information about our customers and how they interact with our insight to help learn about what their needs are and to make projections around how we could make the product better, for example. But in terms of outreach to gather information, it really comes down to, I guess, depends on the scenario, right? If all you need is, I need to fill up a spreadsheet of information, I would recommend Google Forms. They're free. They do a great job of filling up a spreadsheet. If that's all you need is that list of information to figure out who's going to provide stuff for potluck supper. But you're talking about specifically data collection. It kind of comes down to, are you collecting the data? So like if you're collecting the data and you're establishing the relationships between the data, like maybe you're building a database or maybe you're building an Excel spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets. I love databases. I even use Airtable, from time to time to build some databases and stuff. Those are great if you're organizing data. If you're collecting data from other people, though, those people aren't going to know how to do any of that stuff, right? They're not. I mean, you send somebody a spreadsheet and they're going to be like, "You want me to fill out the spreadsheet? Well, you're going to have to tell me how to fill it out." It's not going to be self-evident. You send them a database, they're going to be like, "Okay, this is great. Now what do I do with it?" You have to provide very, very specific things, very specific outreach. So whatever your data collection tool is, you need to have your internal view of how you're going to manage that data over time. But then you also need to know who your end customer is or the end source. And for those people, that experience where they provide their data, that has to be great. It has to be self-evident. There can't be wiggle room, right? Where they could just get in there and just do stuff. Getting back to that Google Sheets scenario, right? Like, ideally, if you're collecting information about who's going to provide potluck, you're going to send out the link and everybody's going to fill it out and they're going to type in what they're going to provide. And that's it, right? You're not going to allow them to get to the actual Google Sheet and actually go edit it, because then I'll be all crazy. People start deleting other people's entries and stuff like that. But the flip side of that, though, is even in that simple example that I just provided, ideally you'd want the people who are actually saying what they're going to bring for potluck to know what the other people have already said, right? So even that simple example, you have to think about, what do you want? If you quality in, quality out, if you want quality potluck, you need to tell the people who are signing up what other people signed up for. So make sure you're finding the right tools, whether that be Cognito Forms, which would definitely do potluck supper submissions or anything else.
Yeah, you could like send out the thank you notes and automate all the follow up.
All the follow-ups, yes, all that's very important too. Yeah, we didn't really talk about, I guess, the why are you collecting the data? Ultimately, it's not just about the data, right? You want to take action on that. If you contact a prospect and you are collecting all this information from them to maybe you're providing a quote to them down the road. Yeah, that automated response saying, "Yep, thank you, got your information. We're going to be following up with you." That's great, right? You want to be able to do that. You want that automated system in place because they want to know that you've got it, right? They don't want to click a button and it says thumbs up. They want to know what you expect that time frame to be, when they're likely to get that follow up. But the flip side of it is, I'll give you all an example. Maybe I go back to that real estate example. You're engaging with a realtor. Maybe you're doing the outbound marketing for that realtor, and you're finding all of these prospects who are interested in a property. Well, now you've connected with them. That prospect has been hooked in. They're very interested and they want to make an offer. Well, they have to start filling out forms, right? With all of this detailed information. And there may be, I don't know, 10 forms they have to fill out as part of the process. And I guess you have to ask the question, why, right? You need to collect information from them for a single transaction, right? You want to ask them the bare minimum information. You don't even have to ask them their name because you already have them as a prospect, right? You already know who they are. You already have some of that demographic data. So when you reach out to them, you're going to ask them for the things you don't know, like how much they want the offer to be, make sure it's for the right property. Ideally, they can pick which property from the list of properties you're selling. They don't have to like type in the address of the property they're buying from the person they're buying it from. So you ask them just for the information that they need to provide, and ask them in a very natural way, where they don't answer any questions that are not relevant. If they're only buying, a lot, don't ask them when they're planning whether they want a termite inspection. Ask them questions that make sense. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, after you've had that nice, simple interaction with them, know that you can then take that data, because it's real data. It's not paper forms, right? It's not bureaucratic overhead. You can take that data and you can do anything you want with it. You can generate documents if you need it for legal reasons, or you can use it for downstream workflows later. But that's really the key. It's quality data that you can take action on and use it to meet the needs of that prospect, of that customer, not them, filling out these 10 forms. And that's a great example in that one vertical, but across the board, I think it's a relevant problem.
That's a good point, Jamie. I have a question. As the industry and kind of this ecosystem that we're in becomes more and more increasingly focused on privacy, how are you finding, various data collection tools that you're using? How are you finding that they ensure data accuracy, consistency, and reliability while still, addressing privacy concerns that are in the ecosystem today in compliance with different data protection regulations?
Right. Yeah, especially regulations. I think GDPR and the European Union has been great. Hopefully, the US will adopt similar data privacy protections to prevent information from being resold without permissions. For us, we also do HIPAA compliance for customers who are collecting medical information. I think those provisions are very important. I think the thing that I would say for anyone who's working within those regulations, understand those regulations exist to educate people to do what they should probably already have been doing to begin with, right? It's not like, it should be common sense that you're not going to tell everybody in the world that, Johnny down the street has, this, genetic disease, right? It's his private information. Everybody knows that. But in terms of how tools are helping provide that protection, part of it's the security you said, which is knowing that the data that's being collected is safe, it's encrypted, it's not going to get breached, accounts aren't going to get hacked, making sure that those measures are in place. And I think to some extent, this move to the cloud has actually helped, because instead of all of these smaller systems that can be maybe hacked into, that have vulnerabilities that aren't getting updated, you've got, more modern systems that are designed to be resilient against it, or they're putting in place a lot of these protections. I definitely would say for security, as it relates to that privacy, your first responsibility is making sure your access to that data is secure. So you want to make sure your access is using two-factor authentication. There's no way that your data can get hacked through your own access. So that's probably step one for that. In terms of the privacy, as it relates to it, now you have the data. How do you make sure that you're doing what you should be doing? That's where that education bit is important. You have to know first what data is considered protected private information, and then you need to know under what circumstances you're allowed to share it and who you're allowed to share it with. And that just depends on the circumstance. I think people think, for example, that they can't be emailed medical information about their diagnosis, if they're, from their medical practice, but they could be. They just have to give consent. And so knowing, okay, this is protected information, this is how I obtain consent, and with that consent, this is what I'm allowed to do with it. Everybody who's dealing with private information needs to understand that for their business, and then just follow the rules. They're not that hard. And the tools definitely help, but they don't replace the education piece.
That's a great point. And we're creeping up on time, so I got to make sure that we ask you this last question that we ask all of our guests, Jamie. And that is, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack?
Yeah, that's great. So one of the things we like to say, one of our core values actually at Cognito is simplicity. So we also have some taglines like easy peasy, or it just works. And so we also kind of, when we were doing our spin out, we basically said this, like, what software should we be using? Because we want it to be super easy. We don't want to mess with it. It really should literally just work. So I can tell you some things that we use today that are very successful in that. Obviously, a lot of organizations use Slack. We use Slack. We also use Microsoft Teams. We don't really care what you want to use. Our philosophy is, if it works for you, it works for you. So we actually oftentimes are using Teams for some of our video calls, Slack for communication. I never use email. I've almost forgotten email exists, other than the fact that I get a lot of emails from external people. But within our organization, it's kind of non-existent, and I'm happy for that. We're able to have a lot more collaborative conversations because of that. And technically, we are a Microsoft shop, so we use a lot of Microsofty things, and VS Code for writing our software, and a lot of our stuff in Microsoft Azure for our hosting and stuff. So definitely, I love all those things. But one of the things we did during our spinoff is we had to take over all the accounting. Suddenly, now we're doing all the accounting, right? And so I actually have found using Xero, which is an online accounting software platform similar to QuickBooks Online. It was great. It was simple. It met our needs. And we can do our closings every month in an hour for a fairly large organization. So that's been pretty cool. Other than those technologies, for me, it's just about use less technology, make sure it's simple, make sure it's easy. And if you find yourself doing the same thing over and over again manually, stop. Just stop. Just figure out some other way to do it. We use Cognito Forms a lot internally for our own company to just automate stuff that we don't want to have to worry about it. We actually do all of our timesheets and our PTO requests. All of that are automated internally using Cognito Forms. So that there were all those internal processes, job applications and recruiting processes and stuff. We've sort of automated those to also make those easy. So I guess I have to list my own company's product in that list for our tech stack, because we definitely use it a lot.
That's awesome. You eat your own dog food or whatever the saying is. You eat your own supper.
100%. So
Yes. That's good. That's really good. I think more companies should do that because then they will feel the same pains as their customers. So thank you for sharing that. And
yes.
Jamie, we're creeping up on time, like I said earlier. So I want to make sure that we ask you before we go, if listeners would like to get in touch with you after the show, how could they do so?
Sure. Well, best thing for, at least for our product, is www.cognitoforms.com. That's COGNITO forms.com. The cool thing with our product is we're very transparent. So you can sign up for a free account and get started, and it's free forever. We also offer free trials with no credit card. So if you want to explore how to automate any business process for any organization anywhere in the world, just go to our website and do that. And you're welcome to also hit me up on LinkedIn and reach out at any time if you're interested in talking with me.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, Jamie. Thank you so much for joining us. Really have enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you both, Jesse and Adam. Really enjoyed it as well.
Absolutely. And audience members, before we go, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. As we learned today, the source is important of your data, and we want to help you. So build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented growth. So we were talking a little bit about AI today. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring your marketing efforts hit the mark every time. So we want to bring you closer to those goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com and click Talk to an Expert. If you're watching on video right now, you can scan the QR code and get in touch with us. And for those curious about deconstructing data, we are open to sponsorship opportunities. If anyone is interested, we're just an email away. And you can also email us if you know anyone who would be a great fit for the show. We would love to have them on. Just reach us at info@bdex.com and share your qualitative data with us so we can make this better for you. And that is all for today. Thank you again, Jamie.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you, Adam. Talk to you later.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Bye-bye.
See y'all later. Bye.